I've wanted my own arcade cabinet for as long as I can remember. For more than 20 years, though, I lived in a condo where there simply wasn't room for one. But after moving into a house with a finished basement, I finally had the space to make that dream a reality.
What the heck, man?
I could have bought a vintage machine or one of the many modern multicades on the market.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Just keep going, you'll get them.
Instead, I decided to take the harder but more rewarding route and build one myself from scratch. And in my spare time over a few months this past winter, that's exactly what I did. One of my goals from the beginning was to reuse and upcycle as much material as I could. While exploring our new house, I discovered old particle board and shelving stored away in the garage loft. Rather than throwing it out, I repurposed it for parts of the cabinet, giving the project a connection to the house itself. For the overall design, I based my build on plans from Mike at the Geek Pub. I loved the clean, compact look of his cabinet and bought his PDF as a starting point. The plans were incredibly helpful, but they were also more than 10 years old. Some dimensions were missing or no longer practical with modern components, so I sometimes had to improvise, reverse engineer measurements, and redesign sections to fit my own hardware. In the end, the cabinet became something uniquely mine. This entire project was built in my garage using handheld tools. No table saw, no drill press, and no fancy woodworking shop. In fact, many of these tools were completely new to me. The project quickly became more than just building an arcade cabinet. It became a crash course in woodworking, cabinetry, finishing techniques, and problem solving. There was plenty of trial and error along the way. Some pieces were built twice. Others were prototyped before I committed to the final version. Every mistake taught me something, and every challenge made the finished product that much more satisfying. Everything started with the side panels. After carefully measuring out the template by hand, I cut the basic shapes using a circular saw and a jigsaw. My very first curved cuts definitely weren't perfect. A reminder that I still had a lot to learn. But with some wood filler, sanding, and patience, they cleaned up surprisingly well. To prepare the reclaimed particle board for years of use, I sealed both sides with an oil-based alkyd primer. Not only did this help protect the material, but it also gave the cabinet a clean, durable foundation for everything that would come later. Seeing those freshly painted panels was one of the first signs that the project was coming together. From there, I cut and installed the internal support cleats using reclaimed shelving material, gradually transforming two flat side panels into the foundation of the cabinet. Before moving any further, I spray painted the interior surfaces with black satin paint. Besides giving the inside a cleaner, more finished appearance, the dark paint helps absorb stray light and reflections, keeping the focus on the screen during gameplay. One of the first major structural pieces I built was the bottom panel. I bolted 4 casters directly through it, making the finished cabinet easy to move around. The exposed bolt heads are hidden inside the machine, and I preferred the added strength of through bolting over simply using wood screws. One unexpected challenge involved the monitor. The original plans didn't specify its mounting angle, and the display used in the reference build was a much older style than the LCD I planned to install. Using Mike's plans, I calculated the angle myself before committing to the design. Another major customization was the sound system. The original plans didn't include a subwoofer, but I wanted the machine to have a little extra punch. Before building the final enclosure, I created a prototype speaker box to test the concept. It was my first experience designing something like this, but after a bit of experimentation, it worked beautifully. The control panel also went through several revisions. I eventually abandoned my first design made of particle board and rebuilt it using MDF. I drilled the joystick and buttonholes with Forstner bits and installed threaded inserts underneath so the joysticks could be removed easily in the future. To give it a modern look, I wrapped the surface in faux carbon fiber vinyl that turned out far better than I expected. On the underside of the panel, I wired all of the buttons and joysticks using zero-delay USB encoder boards. They are inexpensive and made connecting the arcade controls to the Raspberry Pi surprisingly straightforward. Once everything was tested and working properly, the entire control panel could be installed as a single, self-contained unit. With the individual components finished, it was finally time to assemble the cabinet. This was the stage where months of planning started to pay off. Clamps, glue, screws, and a lot of careful alignment slowly transformed a pile of panels into something that unmistakably looked like an arcade machine. I installed a pair of pile speakers on the upper panel and wrapped that section in matching carbon fiber vinyl. Later, when I added LED lighting behind the marquee, I discovered an unexpected bonus. The translucent blue speaker cones glowed beautifully from behind, creating an effect I never planned but absolutely loved. Below the control panel, I built a sliding drawer to hold a keyboard and the electronics of the build. Getting the drawer slides aligned correctly took patience, but it ended up being one of my favorite features of the cabinet. Hidden beneath the control panel, it provides quick and easy access to the Raspberry Pi and the amplifier controls. Because my display was a different thickness than the one used in the original GeekPub build, I had to recess it farther into the cabinet before fabricating a custom plexiglass bezel to fit over top of it. The bezel would not only hide the edges of the LCD panel, but also give the finished cabinet a much cleaner, more authentic arcade appearance. Using a plexiglass scoring tool, I carefully cut a new sheet to match the exact size of the display opening. After masking off the viewing area, I spray painted the outer edges black to create the bezel. Peeling away the masking tape revealed a crisp, professional-looking finish that I was really happy with. With the bezel complete, I could finally remove the protective film from the monitor. A small but incredibly satisfying moment. Before installing the bezel, I applied a 1/4-inch self-adhesive foam tape around its perimeter. This creates a light seal between the bezel and the monitor, preventing any light from the marquee from leaking around the edges of the display. I then carefully slid the bezel into place over the display. Seeing the finished screen framed neatly behind the bezel transformed it from looking like a computer monitor into something that finally resembled a real arcade display. One of the most nerve-wracking moments of the entire project came when routing the slot for the T-molding around the cabinet. At that point, months of work had already gone into the build, and one mistake with the router could have ruined the finished exterior. Thankfully, taking it slow paid off, and once the T-molding snapped into place, the cabinet started looking complete. To finish off the exterior, I applied a final coat of cabinet and furniture melamine paint in bright white. It produced a much cleaner, brighter finish than the primer, and should provide a durable surface for years to come. I also built custom doors for the storage compartment, added iron-on edge banding to cover the exposed particle board edges, and finally moved the cabinet out of the garage and into its new home in the basement. For the marquee artwork, I designed several versions in Photoshop and had them printed on backlit film. I now have a couple of different versions of the marquee that I can swap out when I want to. Initially, I installed 2 LED lights behind the marquee, but after testing them, I realized they actually washed out the colors of the marquee. Removing one produced a much richer and more balanced look. I also chose to leave the cabinet sides plain white for now. I may add side art in the future, but I actually like the clean, understated look paired with the black trim. Powering everything is an 8GB Raspberry Pi in an Argon 1 aluminum heatsink enclosure running Batocera. To drive the audio system, I also installed a compact amplifier inside the cabinet, which powers both the stereo speakers and the custom subwoofer. Once I confirmed everything was working properly, I took the time to neatly route and secure all of the internal wiring. Good cable management not only makes future maintenance easier, but also gives the inside of the cabinet a much cleaner and more professional look. Rather than trying to emulate everything under the sun, I focused on the systems that mean the most to me. Classic arcade games, the Atari 2600, the Sega Master System, and the Sega Genesis. Those are the games I grew up with, and they're the ones that bring back the strongest memories. I won't dive into the full software setup here, but I wanted to give you a quick look at the interface and some of the games running on the finished machine. After about 3.5 months of evenings and weekends in the garage, the project was finally complete. Even better, I finished it just in time for a barbecue we hosted at our house. Watching friends and family enjoy something I had built with my own hands was incredibly rewarding. Is it perfect? Definitely not. If I built another one, there are a few details I would change, but that's part of what makes a project like this special. It wasn't about building the perfect arcade cabinet. It was about learning new skills, solving unexpected problems, and finally creating something I'd wanted for decades. And every time I switch it on, I'm reminded that sometimes building your dream is even more satisfying than buying it. If you enjoyed this build, please give the video a like and consider subscribing. It really helps support the channel and future projects like this. And if you've ever built your own arcade cabinet, or you're thinking about starting one, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what you would have done differently, or answer any questions about my build. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.